Yeah, it's time for us to multiply our worms. We've got so many worms in here that it's getting dangerous that we might overthrow the health of this box. So we're going to make two more boxes. What we do is we drill these holes and we put filter cloth on top of it because the worms have this tendency, they want to crawl out through a hole to reach new spaces. So it's always good to put filter cloth down and prevent them from exiting. So we're going to do three boxes. I'll explain why we have these worms. It's very different from most other gardeners. We have these worms contained until we use them in our trench composting system. So what we'll do is we'll create a massive deep hole, fill it up with all kinds of organic matter, and we'll put like 6 handfuls of these red wigglers in there to help digest that trench composting. Yeah, so I want to show you my 3 tricks that I use when I'm doing trench composting. I go really deep. I don't go 24 inches. This is like 48 inches deep, maybe even more. We have a mixture of sticks to keep the compost quite aerated. We have a secret set of components. We use lots of comfrey leaves. We use lots of red wigglers, lots of worms, and it's a little bit of a story with these worms. Once the food runs out, like once they've digested all this compost that's in here, they have to move on to different areas. So it's like sending them on a little bit of a lost mission because sometimes they don't make it. They don't survive it if they run out of energy. The next thing we always do, we always do this, and we add lots of fine sand to the compost. And the reason for the fine sand is that it gets mixed in nicely and it gives us a really beautiful compost when it's done. The sand makes this is trench composting here, and there's a huge element of sand in that. And that huge element of sand makes it incredibly usable in the future. We actually harvest this after about 6 months. We have maybe 30 of these trench composting plots where we actually come in and harvest it and put it in other parts of the garden and start trench composting again. So we have these dedicated holes that we use for trench composting. We constantly dig them out again, and we have a rotation that we have every 2 weeks. We have a beautiful hole that we can harvest and use to prop up the garden energy. So by adding this sand, we're doing ourselves a real favor of actually making this compost that comes out of it usable right away. It's incredible because you can feel the sand content in this. That's how effective this sand is mixed in with the materials that we compost. Now, when you are doing the trench composting, if you want to really have a really strong compost, the more diverse the materials you have that you enter into the soil, the more that soil is going to be alive. It's going to have all these different microorganisms that live in this soil because of all the different materials. So remember, when you're doing trench composting, always try to get it as biodiverse as you can with the weeds that you put in here, with the wood pieces you put in, with the worms, with the everything you put in there is going to help it make it more usable in your garden in the future. And having this compost buried out of sight and with no one seeing it, dogs not getting in here, and we plant right on top of it immediately. We don't wait around. We're going to put maybe 100 beans on top of here. And we want it working. We want it growing. We want everything in there doing incredibly well. And we want it to decay nicely in a way that is usable as a great soil afterward. Okay, so this is a week later. We've put more soil and sand on top of it. We planted maybe 200 beans. There's more and more coming out. So we want this whole area to be energized. And this has maybe 3 inches of topsoil or sandy topsoil, whatever you want to describe it as. And the beans have no problem growing right on top of the trench composting. Remember that. Use this trench composting scenario in such a way that you plant on top of it right away. It makes such a difference in even the processing of the materials. Having this covered with green life, having the bean roots going way deep into the trench composting. Like when we dig this out, we'll have roots that go all the way to the bottom of the trench because it's so nicely aerated and there's so much energy in here. So trench compost, cover, plant right away. That is the best way to deal with your trench composting in terms of getting it ready with incredible energy in 6 months. So this is our satellite where we can take the worms, put them in new trench composting piles, and get them to work. But we need our stable set of worms to be able to do this satelliting of the worms into the trench composting areas. So we're going to start to show you here. This is our typical, when we open up the bin, and I'll show you how aggressive these worms are. Look at this. Like completely overloaded. That's why we're doing this separation. Look at that in there. Wow, look, Laura, vas allí adentro. And this is right in front of our kitchen. Imagine, there's no smell, and it works incredibly well. So we're not going to disturb this too much. We're just going to divide it up a little bit so everything has a new start. Look at this. Okay, so we have these guys on the bottom. I'm going to leave this intact on the bottom. So the only thing we have left to do is to top it off with some really dry, rich soil. That's next. So we're going to do that. Okay, I'm happy with that. We have 3 good starting points. And this is one thing to avoid, is try to avoid as much citrus as you can. We have all these little guys here too. Look at these guys. These are real workhorses. They love getting in that compost as well. Now, one thing we don't do is we don't drill holes in the lid because we don't want too much water in there. So we actually don't drill physical holes because we find that these bins will fill up completely with water if you have any holes in the lid. And there's enough oxygen. We've never had any oxygen problems. Yeah, so this is like 10 steps away from the kitchen sink where we store all the compost. And we have a separate container for citrus products, citrus compost. So basically every day or every 2 days, we keep putting this in here. And when we need worms for the trench composting, we come in here, we'll grab the worms and set them up into the compost in the trench composting areas. And then what we do, and this is really important, we come back 3 months later and we come and rescue our worms just in case that the worms they run out of food. So this idea of rescuing your worms inside the trench composting is very important to us because we want them working again somewhere else. Yes, absolutely crucial to have a good base of actual topsoil or good dirt, kind of on the dry side, to add to these bins. If you only put compost in here, it's going to be very hard on the worms to not get slimy. because this organic matter does get very, very slimy very quickly inside a bin like this. So having dry soil gives the worms a little bit of a chance to actually have a dry environment where they can survive and not rot inside the bin. So very, very important to have a good 2 wheelbarrows mixed in with this compost that you're going to create. Now, this idea of harvesting these bins isn't really our focus. Our focus is having handfuls of worms that we can put in our trench composting areas to get them to work and to give them 3 months of lots of food and lots of energy. When we dig up these trench composting areas, we notice that the worms are 10-fold, 20-fold. There's so many worms that we can reharvest and put into new areas that we're trench composting. So it's a bit of a perpetual machine that we've created, and we want to keep it that way, that we can actually have these worms creating so much energy for us in our own gardens. Yeah. Okay, that's it. So as I said before, we don't drill holes in these lids because we don't want this to fill up with water. We just basically put the lid on loosely, and all the other insects get in as well. So there must be access. So this is charged. Probably for the next 2-3 years, we have our worms to put into our trench composting. And it's this energetic machine that we're promoting in the garden, that lots of activities in the garden are completed naturally.